Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia.
And my name is Aaron.
And today we're going to be talking about the 1987 film Masters of the Universe, based off of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. We seem to be on a bit of a He-Man / She-Ra kick lately. We recently discussed about She-Ra and the Princesses of Power on Dream Machine, and now we're doing a casual chat on the Masters of the Universe movie.
Yeah, and so first of all, just to let you guys know, sorry that we've been absent basically for the whole month of January, because originally 2025 has been such a draining year because we did so much stuff over this year, and so we never had a chance to actually properly decide what we're going to do for 2026. So we're happy to report we've had a meeting. We're finally going to be able to decide, what's going to happen in 2026. And so we've got a lot of exciting stuff planned for you. So while it may look like that January was actually a bit of a waste, actually it was worthwhile. And so we've finally fully recharged, finally got a plan in place for what we're going to do for the rest of the year. And so, but just to hold you guys over, we're going to talk about this movie for some reason.
Well, there is well, there actually is a reason, because there is going to be a new Masters of the Universe movie that's coming out this June.
Yeah.
And we saw the trailer for it.
And we did. And so, it's interesting because when you and I saw this trailer, the first thing we thought of was Guardians of the Galaxy and the Marvel movies and we're also, some little bits of DC, and we just kind of looked at it and thought, they're trying to take something as silly as He-Man and trying to make something really serious out of it, but then they're going to throw in some kind of some of that humor that we're aware of within Marvel movies. It knows that it's silly, but it takes itself far too seriously. I don't know, is that the direction we're going to go in? But we've only had a teaser trailer. We've not had a full trailer yet, or we've not even seen the movie. It comes out in June.
Yeah.
And so when we finally probably go out to go see it, and we review this Masters of the Universe once again for 2026, we'll let you know what our thoughts are of it. But for the meantime, because we've only got one frame of reference really for this, besides the He-Man TV show itself, and probably even She-Ra even to a degree.
Not really.
Yeah, I'm talking about the old version, not the new version.
Yes.
But in regards to He-Man and Masters of the Universe, this is not the first time that we have tread into this territory. Let's introduce you to Masters of the Universe 1987.
Wow. Okay, so I briefly discussed about this movie many years ago when Kevin and I did a podcast all about He-Man, and we briefly talked about the movie because we didn't really want to talk about it because it was just so awful. We mostly talked about the animated series, and we briefly talked about the 1990 version, but yeah, so I guess this is a much more in-depth discussion of Masters of the Universe from 1987, and whoo boy, are we in for a fun ride.
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to talk about the production of this, because this is really important, because Conan Films, was in financial difficulties at this point, and I think what they were doing at the time is that they were looking for that big thing that was going to basically lift them out, that lifeboat that was going to basically get them through, the choppy waters that they found themselves in. So they, here's the thing about this. I don't blame them for going for He-Man and Masters of the Universe, because in the 80s, it was a big thing. Yeah. And, the toys were huge. The show was huge. There was, all sorts of merchandise around this thing. He-Man, Masters of the Universe, He-Man's battles with Skeletor for Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
It was very enthralling for a lot of kids and a lot of young people. So it made a lot of sense for Canon Films to approach, Filmation and say, we want to do this franchise, and we want to bring it up onto the big screen. However, I think maybe the devil in the detail, probably should have been examined before they really went into this, because, first of all, Canon Films were not in a financial position to pull this off. They just weren't. And so this movie ended up being really, really ambitious. And we're not just talking about, the bankable stars that were in this. Keep in mind, we'll talk about who played He-Man in a bit, but the fact that they brought in quite a lot of good actors into this, and so you could say that it was probably what a very, very not very well done rendition of the Katzenberg approach that you see with DreamWorks movies. These people you see and are on the screen, you recognize from other places, and so this is what they tried to do, and so because of that, you ended up creating this horrendous situation where you have a massive epic, you have really big characters who probably are going to be demanding a lot of money for all of this. You then bring in, a production staff and even the music, which sounds way out of this, and for what they were trying to achieve. But we will get further into the itty-gritties of that. I think that needs to be, acknowledged, because while Canon Films were trying to do something really, really ambitious, they really didn't know the gravity of what they were really getting themselves into, and oh boy, did the gravity hit hard when this thing finally came out.
Yeah, so also another thing that I highly recommend that you check out is Masters Cast, which is a He-Man / She-Ra podcast. So originally the story was going to go like this. So one of the original drafts of the script was done by David Odell, who previously worked on films such as Supergirl and The Dark Crystal. And he was going to be writing a story involving with Eternia and Snake Mountain, and it was going to be revealed that He-Man's mother originated from Earth, and there was going to be a collaboration between the two planets and how they formed. And so, that script got completely scrapped, and so we have what we now know today from the 1987 film. And
well, this is the thing about this. Like, you can tell that there was a huge debate going on about what the story of He-Man should be, which really is a really stupid conversation when you really think about it. We know what the story of He-Man is. You have Prince Adam, who is in Eternia, and he has this secret identity that
the sorceress granted him powers with a sword.
Exactly, yeah, and then he is there to basically be at the forefront to have the battles with Skeletor, for protecting Castle Grayskull. It couldn't be any more simpler than that. It's as simple as Super Mario going back through 8 worlds and then rescuing a princess. It's as simple as Link, reuniting the Triforce in order to save Hyrule from the forces of evil forces of Ganon, and his minions, and saving Princess Zelda. It's that simple. But I can't believe that they couldn't take such a simple premise and turn it into something, that is, feasible. And this is what's sort of the disappointing and the worst parts of Masters of the Universe. They took a simple concept and they absolutely made a mess of it.
Yeah.
And it beggars belief when you really look at what was going on behind the scenes and then finally figure out what you ended up with. How is this possible?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. So, yeah, I guess we can talk about the cast. So, you would think that a massive, big star like Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger would be cast as He-Man, but no, we have Dolph Lundgren.
Now, there is a caveat to this. Keep this in mind, he became popular after the Rocky movie, where he basically battled, funny enough, one of the people we mentioned that potentially could have been He-Man, Sylvester Stallone, but even then, it's difficult because, could you really see Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone doing any more justice to He-Man than, what Dolph tried to do?
No, because...
Not really.
I mean, if Arnold Schwarzenegger would have been He-Man, people would have thought, oh, this is the next Conan the Barbarian movie?
Exactly, yeah, and, he also, Schwarzenegger at the time was already making his, his name in Hollywood with all the stuff that he was doing already, he was becoming a massive action star even before Masters of the Universe was even a conceivable thing.
Yeah, he was already known for the first Terminator movie. Then we have Predator and Commando. So yeah, he was pretty big out there. And Stallone, no introduction. The Rocky movies. You have Rambo. No question as to how big those guys were back in the 80s.
Yeah, in regards to Dolph Lundgren, I think they were looking for somebody who definitely could resemble He-Man and be feasible as He-Man. And to be fair to Dolph, he tried his absolute best to actually look the part.
Yeah.
He grew out a mullet. That probably wouldn't have been, such a daring thing to do back in the 80s. But it's today I think it probably would have been a regrettable hairstyle choice.
Yeah.
And then he to be fair to Dolph, he kept himself in good shape and good grief, he had to be because he was pretty much semi-naked the entire time that he was there, and he was even more naked by the time we got to the end of the movie. So he had to keep himself in that. We're not talking about Emerald Forest nudity by any stretch of the imagination. We're not going that far.
No.
But yeah, like I mean, Dolph. I mean, you look at him and you would, obviously probably in test takes when they did it. I mean, obviously him walking around as He-Man probably was, something that you could believe in. But the minute he opened his mouth, it was just kind of like, but this is the problem with He-Man. He-Man is a talker. Like, he has the lines. He has the comebacks. He, gives you his presence. So, like, his voice literally echoes in the cartoon. And in this, like, you've got a very, softly spoken, very, I would say, very quiet. Like, he only gets angry when really he needs to be. And that's not very much in this movie when you think about it. Do you know how many times did Dolph actually raise his voice in this movie? Not very often.
Not very often.
Yeah.
I mean, even when he was in tortured pain, I mean, he just like...
It's like, just this, I can guarantee you, probably, Arnold Schwarzenegger probably, playing the Terminator probably, like, gave off more human emotion than probably Dolph did when he was being tortured.
Oh, gosh.
But, it's crazy to think that, you have a character which he is big, he's larger than life, he's He-Man, and you only deliver us effectively, like, and I don't want to disrespect Dolph by saying this, but, probably like 35% of what the character actually is, and then you leave out the rest?
It's even less than that if you consider that he only stays as He-Man throughout the rest of the movie. He never becomes Prince Adam.
Well, I don't know if that was a choice that they took, because I don't know if they wanted to, like, say, oh, well, we've got to pay another actor to play Prince Adam, because it would have been a case of that they would have, also, they have to get also, what would you do in that situation? Because the idea is that, He-Man becomes larger than life. I mean, do you just put like a t-shirt and a pair of jeans on Dolph and, like, just say, oh, well, he's not He-Man right now, he's Prince Adam. Like, I don't know if it would have worked, to be honest with you. Like, it probably would have worked if they decided to get, well, we're going to get someone who looks like Dolph, but he's obviously smaller in stature, and he just looks like a regular everyday dude. And then he just pulls out his magic sword, and then, mind you, where would he put his magic sword out of if he's just wearing that? Like, that would be a thing in itself. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's magical, and, like, it fits in his pocket, and, like, he just pulls it out, and he just immediately becomes big. Sure. I don't know, but, that probably would have given, Dolph a bit more believability, but then you still got to get him to talk. And, like, that's the problem in this whole situation with this. And so, unfortunately, with the limited ability, and don't get me wrong, like, he was really terrifying as Ivan Drago in the Rocky movie, but I mean, like, that's when he was playing a villain. He was a quiet, silent villain, and he basically only muttered, like, I will break you, and, like, but now you've got him as, like, the heroic protagonist who is can be able to match Skeletor in word for word. Like, it just didn't work. And you can definitely tell in his performance, like, it was infuriating sometimes to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess with He-Man out of the way, let's go over to Skeletor, where he's played by Frank Langella.
He's the absolute opposite of Dolph in this movie. If anything, a lot of people who watch Masters of the Universe, he carries this movie. Yeah. Like, and it's funny though, because Frank Langella, he's only got unfortunately, a very flat Skeletor to play with. Like, in the cartoon series, like, he was cracking, like, insulting jokes, like, amongst, like, his henchmen. But in this, it's kind of like he plays him very serious, and he plays him like, he's not fun to be around. Skeletor in the cartoon was fun to be around. This guy isn't. Like, he's just like a domineering. Like, when the movie started and we saw Skeletor, we immediately were comparing him to, like, Darth Vader or, like, the Emperor from Star Wars. And actually, in fact, that's a lot of people pointed that out when they first watched this movie. It's like, this looks like Star Wars.
Yeah, it does look like Star Wars. I mean, you have the credits that looks like Star Wars. You have
the credits look like Superman.
Oh, the credits.
The credits are Superman. Okay, then the opening is Star Wars.
Okay, yeah. So the credits is Superman. The theme, the presentation is Star Wars. Yeah, it's like when we were saying the moment that we saw Skeletor, he looks like Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all his minions also look like stormtroopers as well. Like, I mean, this could easily fit is like, is this just like, side story of Star Wars? Like, you could see that. Like, people will probably look at, you're watching Disney Plus, like, they could probably stick Masters of the Universe into Disney Plus. It's like, oh, hey, it looks like a Star Wars spin-off. Hey, they made another Star Wars spin-off in the 1980s. I never knew that. That's the way it looks. And you probably will look at some scenes and thought, oh, this is isn't, He-Man. And that to me, I mean, was, quite disappointed because you can tell it was boring. And by the way, you can actually, to be fair, if you squint a little bit, you can see some sort of like elements of Dark Crystal in there a little bit as well. The way that it's drawn, the way that Castle Grayskull looks, some of the, like, the way that some of our characters who were captured and everything like that. It's funny because even in the Dark Crystal, I mean, like, even some of the side characters, at least you got to have some emotional time with. In this, like, it's just, here we are in Eternia, like, a lot of people get captured, and the only people who don't get captured is He-Man and, like, Man of Arms and, another character, Teela, and they all get thrown into Earth.
Yeah, and here's the thing, those are the only main characters from the He-Man series that you see. Yeah.
Where's Orko?
Yeah, where's Orko? Well, yeah, here's the thing, they wanted to include Orko in the film, but they couldn't make him work because, as you know, Orko has no legs. And so,
which I call BS on, because they're able to give us a load of scenes with He-Man surfing on like some surfboard, like Silver Surfer, yet they can't give us Orko, like in and like hide his legs, and do some sort of like camera trickery when they could do it with the whole flying scene. Why? Also, you got other things flying around with no strings on them. Like, why can't you do the same thing with Orko? Like I get was Jim Henson still around at that time? I can't remember.
Well, I mean, the movie came out in 1989, so 1987. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, like, you couldn't have, Jim Henson was doing some amazing stuff, at that time. I mean, you couldn't bring him to this project and say, give him some advice on what to do with Orko. Like, seriously, there was an opportunity to do it.
Anyway, but yeah, so instead we get a new character named Gwildor, who invents this MacGuffin known as the Cosmic Key that can be able to transcend into multiple dimensions and multiple places to go around. And yeah, apparently there are like 2 different versions of it, and Skeletor has one of them. He just needs the other one so that he can be able to get to the cosmos, so he can be able to absorb the power and become this huge god and control everything that the world has to offer.
It's amazing. Like, could you imagine if the cartoon Skeletor got all of this and, like, how much he would play this up? That would be so entertaining to watch. But instead, what we basically get these, like, long rambling speeches about, like, how he feels the power going into him. And don't get me wrong, like, in any other, like, if it was Lord of the Rings, or if it was Star Wars, or if it was, like, any other fantasy epic, it probably would be an epic scene. But this is not this. This is He-Man. This is Masters of the Universe. If anything, Frank should be hamming this up and, like, making all sorts of hilarious things to it and making this entertaining, but it's not. It's just, you're just waiting for it to happen, and then finally it happens,
Yeah, I think
even then it's not very compelling.
Yeah, I think the reason why was because they wanted to generate it to a massive audience, and so they, I mean, this was at the time in the 80s.
To whom? Like, everyone who was expecting a He-Man movie was not expecting this.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, you're gonna generate toward the kids because, the kids are the ones who bought
the toys. How is this gonna be generated towards kids? It was a dark sci-fi epic. If anything, it was probably gravitating towards all the people watching, like, the dark sci-fi movies that were coming out at the time.
Yeah.
This wasn't, for, this definitely wasn't for, my generation that grew up with He-Man. I'll definitely say that. It was definitely catered towards more of an adult audience. I mean, look at the other thing that they did this. They moved away massively from He-Man. They decided to play this whole thing where, this girl lost her parents in a plane accident, and she's blaming herself because, she didn't go to the beach with them. I don't know how that presents a plane crash, but whatever.
Well, the reason why was because she was focusing on studying so that she can be able to pass her test.
Well, anyway, I digress. This whole story then plays out like it plays out more like a teenage, kind of like, love story, like, with other things attached to it.
Yeah, it feels like a coming of age story that you would see John Hughes doing.
And what's that got to do with He-Man?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely
no.
Nothing.
I can't believe this is what so infuriates me about, I said before about the story being so simple. Why would you convolute it with something so, unrelated to Masters of the Universe whatsoever? What's this got to do with anything?
Yeah, and it's kind of sad to think that this will be like a prototype for a whole bunch of other cartoons that would be adapted into live action. It's like, oh, we don't really know what to do with the characters that we already have, so let's take them over to our world, where they're interacting with a whole bunch of people who have their own problems that has absolutely nothing to do with the characters.
This one thing I will give it credit for. And you'll be very surprised me giving credit for doing this. But at least when He-Man and Man of Arms and Teela all went to Earth, what's the one place they didn't go to?
Where's that?
New York City. At least they didn't go to New York, which I'm pretty happy about. So,
Yeah,
like,
I
how
know
many
you're-
times
I know
have we
you're
said, like, oh, hey, let's take fantasy character and let's take him totally out of this world. For some strange reason, they have to go to New York City. Like the Smurfs and, like, various other characters who have ended up in the city. Tom and Jerry have ended up in New York at some point. Like, I'm really glad that someone sat down and said, yeah, let's not take He-Man to New York City. Let's take him, what was it? Was it in Denver, was it? Or something like, was it Colorado that they ended up in?
I think so, yeah.
I think it was, yeah. They ended up there, which I'm really happy about. So, yeah. You know, I guess that's one thing I'll say is good about this movie, which is very, very little to say.
Oh, it's in California.
It's in California. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like, well, that shows how cheap the movie was, doesn't it? Couldn't get outside the state.
Anyway, so I guess we'll talk about that. So we have our character, Julie Winston, and yeah, she's a teenage girl who is going through the regrets that her parents were killed in a plane crash because she didn't want to go with them to the beach because she was busy studying. So they decided, oh, well, don't worry, we're going to take our, Julie's father is a pilot, and so, he's going to fly a plane so that they can go somewhere else while she stays at home and studies. And they died in the plane crash. It's been over a year since that happened, and she decides that she's going to, leave her town so that she can be able to start fresh and new. So she lives in California. She's going all the way to New Jersey so that she can be able to get herself a new life.
And by the way, I think Julie is played by Courtney Cox, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yeah, from Friends. How jarring is that?
Yeah, Phoebe from Friends.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. Or,
No, I don't think it was Phoebe. No, it wasn't Phoebe.
Monica.
Monica from Friends.
Yeah, she's Monica from Friends, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about that, seeing, Monica from Friends interacting with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, I'm surprised in the Friends series. I'm surprised they didn't just bring like Dolph Lundgren in for like a cameo, just kind of like say, oh yeah, Courtney Cox was in Masters of the Universe 1987, just for a giggle.
It's actually funny. You were mentioning something after we watched this film that you decided to look up Dolph Lundgren's IMDb page.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping we are going to keep this conversation out, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think I was wondering. I never saw Dolph in like any other movie, until Expendables 4, and I realized, why is it that we're not seeing Dolph in this? Like after he ended up in Master of the Universe, he ended up going into a lot of like direct-to-video, movies and like other things that just weren't really of note, and like it's so sad that it's potentially Master of the Universe, showed up Dolph's weak point so much that he never did another big movie after that.
Yeah,
like
I mean, it wasn't until Expendables 4 and Creed 2 in which he came back into doing acting again.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, oh wow, like where Dolph Lundgren's in Creed 2, like where's he been this entire time? That's a sad thing to think about.
It is really sad.
Yeah, like, but not knocking the guy. I mean, like, I've never heard any. Here's the thing about this. I've never heard any bad stories about him. I mean, like, I might be wrong, but it's just weird that he stars in Rocky, he stars in a He-Man movie, and like, after that, like, he didn't really do anything else of note after that. Like,
Not
it's
really,
just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so Julie also has a boyfriend named Kevin who's a musician, and while they're at the cemetery paying, the respects to her parents, that's when they found the cosmic key, and that was when Gwildor decided to transport them into another dimension so that they can be able to get away from Skeletor. And so he finds it and he thinks it's a Japanese synthesizer.
Well, I mean, like, we actually didn't speak too much about Gwildor, actually, and the one thing I'll say about it is that, I mean, like, he's not a substitute for Orko, but I mean, like, he is understandable. It's he is this master inventor. He can really like create anything out of nothing. So like, it's not that he's the throwaway character. He is actually really useful in this situation because he's good now on Earth, and now he's got to like, in order to for them to survive on this Earth, he's got to invent like all sorts of like crazy gadgets, in order to for them to adapt in this new world. Like, I think. As much as people criticize the pink Cadillac, I mean, like, it was, it was kind of hilarious. It's like, it was a piece of junk that it was just the only thing I could find at the time. It's like, that's, it's like, I guess, you got to work with what you've got, I guess. And, but in regards to, this as a character, I mean, it's, a lot of people will probably make fun of it, and a lot of people think that it's, a really, it's like, just like, comic relief, like, side character that you have, like, it does all this goofy stuff along with, like, being being a wacky inventor, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, I mean, wacky inventors was sort of like the thing back in the 80s and like towards the early 90s, like where you had. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Who I Blew Up with the Kid were big at that time, and like and also if you look at like other like fantasy or even like animated shit, there was always like the wacky inventor that kind of like did like screwy things.
Doc Brown.
Oh yeah, like Gwildor is not like a stranger in this in this type of character trope, because it was around for quite a lot. If you look around and look at all the movies, this type of character was around.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean there's that, and but then obviously we focus on Kevin, and I mean again, like he's just the boyfriend in this. Like he drives a van around, like he's supposed to be sort of kind of cool, like he's in a band, and which I do like the idea that he's found this what he thinks is a new instrument. He really wants to know much about it. So I think his curiosity, I think, is something to write home about. And he actually tries to do his best to actually figure out what this thing is. And so to be honest with you, that could have been a movie in itself. Like, you didn't need He-Man or Masters of the Universe. Like, you start off with this couple and they, visiting the cemetery to visit, like, Julie's dead parents. And then all of a sudden this thing just comes flying out of the sky. And then it's like, oh, wow, what is this thing? That could have been the movie itself. And then, like, the fact that it's doing like all these screwy things, it could have been like Batteries Not Included. In a way, like, they could have easily, like, just done a movie about that and leave He-Man totally out of it altogether, and still, I think, probably, come up with something that, was half decent.
Yeah, and
probably less money, too.
Yeah, so Kevin gives the cosmic key over to Charlie, thinking that maybe he would know what it is. So Charlie is his best friend, and he's also the one who runs a music shop where he gets all his instruments and all that stuff. And
here's another thing I'll also give the movie very good credit for as well, is that the music store is playing Jimi Hendrix as he walks in. And as you all know, Jimi Hendrix, every time he did a session, he would always burn his guitar on the stage, and so the fact that at the very we're towards like the final third of the movie, like they burned the music shop down, I think that was good symbolism in my opinion. I think that was actually quite clever, that the way they did that, which is kind of amazing to think. Like I thought I was going to walk into Master Universe thinking, oh, I'm not going to really get virtually nothing out of this, but then I noticed that little thing and it's like, oh hey, that's a good nod. So I mean it's funny because there actually are like one, maybe like two little things that actually are in this movie that you actually get some sort of like brain stimulation out of, but the rest of it is just crap.
Yeah, it is crap. Yeah, I guess we'll mention all the other side characters because why not? So, yeah, I mean, the only other characters from He-Man besides, He-Man, Skeletor, Evelyn is Man of Arms and Teela, and yeah.
Well, actually, they kept Beastman as well, and like they kept funny, like where they actually did have some like all the villains, from the cartoon show, and unfortunately one of them, Skeletor's actually to kill, which is kind of like never happened in the show.
No,
and so,
he never
like,
did.
Yeah, so like it's amazing that they managed to be able to sit in like all the villains, but they couldn't keep all the good guys. Like it's that was kind of weird.
Yeah, and then they also invented some new bad guys too. Like you had Saurod, Blade, and Karg, and
Blade I think he had to have because you needed a cool sword character. I guess.
Yeah, of course, you needed to have the cool sword character. I mean, why not at this point? Am I right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I mean, essentially you have, switching between the two sides, especially with Julie and Kevin having access to the cosmic key. Every time they play it, they're thinking like, oh, wow, look at these cool lights and look at this cool effects. And it plays this rockin' music. But in reality, what happens is that it's sending out a signal of where the cosmic key is, and it's sending the coordinates over to planet Earth so that they can be able to send their henchmen over so that they can be able to attack them. They start off with Julie first, and they completely just destroy the auditorium where they're going to be having the school dance. And that school dance decoration, it just reminded me of Back to the Future's Enchantment Under the Sea.
It makes me wonder, like, is that what they were referencing? Like, because actually I was thinking about that, because when did Back to the Future actually come out?
1985.
1985, so this came out in 1985. Yeah, like, you can tell that they were blatantly ripping off other things at that point. I mean, like, you can't really call that a reference, really, can you? Like, for Back to the Future is only like a couple of years old, and there he comes, Master of the Universe. It's like, oh, they're having exactly the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I just think that also with the evil characters. I mean, like Evil Lynn. I think I always keep calling her Evelyn for some reason. I think that's the pun in Evil Lynn, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's In regards to like the way that they do this, I mean, obviously they also turn the evilness of these characters all the way up as well. Like Evil Lynn pretends to be Julie's mom, like because she finds information about the fact about her dead parents, and she fools Julie into handing over the key, and but mind you, the problem is that also that was sort of kind of a thing in Spaceballs as well, which is kind of like why are you referencing Spaceballs? Like it's just no.
I mean, again, with the reference of Spaceballs, it's parroting Star Wars, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, fooled you. But, and it's funny because I think, towards the end of the movie, I think Evil Lynn, I think they were building her up to be like, if they somehow, decided they were going to make another sequel out of this, which I think they were going to do. If you remember, Evil Lynn was like, she evacuated from Castle Grayskull when all, the fighting was going on towards the final third. So, like, I think they were, like, saying that, oh, yeah, Evil Lynn is going to be, like, the next bad guy, of, Masters of the Universe 2 if they ever decided to do it, which, obviously with the way that this turned out, I'd be very surprised if they ever ended up doing that.
Well, they tried to, but it just didn't work out.
Exactly, yeah. So, if anything, the second villain in this is obviously got to be Evil Lynn, and it's funny because it shows how unfun Skeletor is as well. Because if you remember, like Evil Lynn just said, like he's like, oh well, let's let's spare, because he was going to kill all the rest of them. He was going to be like, oh no, well I think talents will go to good waste, and then Skeletor said, okay, then you can go in with them, and if you fail, then I'll kill you too. It's just like Skeletor isn't fun. He it's fun when he's like doing it's often when he's doing dastardly things, but he fills it in with insulting his henchmen and saying insulting things about the good guys and things like that. That's what made him fun. And that's what made him really. That's the reason why he stands the test of time today, because a lot of people like to watch He-Man because of Skeletor's cracks like everybody, but this Skeletor just isn't fun. And this is no knock to Frank. I mean, he does a really good job with what he's got to work with, but what he's got to work with is pretty sad, really think about it.
Yeah, and the reason why he took on this role in the first place was because his son was a huge He-Man fan, and Skeletor was one of his favorite characters.
Well, I realized the thing what his son thought of his performance. I mean, he probably was, don't get me wrong, Frank's, it's funny because Frank's performance is what carries this movie, really, but unfortunately, for me, it's just kind of, I look at him, it's like, well, he's not fun to be around, the time I feel safe in this movie when he's not around on the screen, really, it's just, which is really sad to think about when it comes to Skeletor.
The choreography leaves a lot to be desired. So many close-up shots every time that He-Man is swinging around a sword.
Oh yeah, the first fight scene where he tries to, when he rescues Gwildor, I looked at it and I just thought, they need to shoot this again. You can't really see, it's too up close and the angles are wrong, and you can't really see, He-Man really, interacting with the villains, let alone actually fighting them.
Yeah.
It's just, that was really disappointing to watch, again. I saw this, for the first time when I was a child, and I'd not really seen it, for a long time after that, and then when I come to revisit it, it's like, there's a reason why I didn't get as much, entertainment in the fighting scenes as I thought I would do, because, they're shot so poorly.
Yeah.
This needed to be shot again. If I looked at that and said, no, you need to do this again.
Yeah, because, I mean, you don't know how bad a action scene can be unless you see a really bad one. And trust me, it's really slow, and the close-up shots are very distracting. You can't really see what's going on in the fight because, for the most part, you're seeing, this really strange angle that you can't really get yourself invested into, oh, wow, this is a really cool action fight, and no.
And you know what's crazy? The fact that they, despite the fact that they had such a small budget to work with, and the fact they're in financial difficulties, that they managed to make such elaborate sets and elaborate costumes, and they managed to put together this so well. And yet when they come to doing the action scenes and coming to doing some of the some of the shooting, that's probably the worst parts of it. Where it's almost like they burned money, because they put all this stuff together and they shot it so poorly. What's going on, guys?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to I completely forgot to mention that there's another character we forgot to mention is that one of the police officers who is just like so bewildered at the fact that, oh, there's this really strange device, and then all of a sudden there's this arson that happened in the high school, and then he takes Kevin in trying to look for Julie, and then
it kind of reminds me of like remember the police officer in Terminator that was interrogating Kyle Reese, and if you remember in the cuts in the stuff that they cut out, they actually had it where the police chief was actually going to believe what Kyle Reese was going to say, and so they actually cut all that stuff out because they wanted to make it a bit more like in fact that no one would believe what he's saying, and it looks like they were trying to like put him back in. Oh, well, what if the police officer had like an inkling, like he knew something was going on, and he wasn't gonna like close his mind to like oh well this is that and the other, and I think that's what they tried to do with this police officer character, but unfortunately, he's not executed well.
Yeah.
And, it would have been kind of cool, like, if he was along for the ride. It's like, oh, wow, like, these things are invading, like, my instincts that, I had back when I was fighting in Korea is what's going to keep me alive in all of this. And it's not until, like, towards the end when they finally go to Eternia, like, he starts saying, okay, I'm going to load up my shotgun and start shooting some bad guys. Like, it would have been cool if he, like, did it, like, a bit earlier on. But in fact, if he was even actually helping out during, like, the music store siege.
Yeah, but even then, he didn't even actually see them at all because they were locked up in the room so that they can be able to hide away from all the blasts and the attacks.
Yeah.
And so it was...
He must have been aware that something was going on.
He was aware that something was going on, but the whole, these, soldiers coming from a completely different dimension up in space is what's causing it.
Yeah, I would have had it, like, earlier in the film, like, he did finally, when they finally came through, like, he had some sort of confrontation with some of them where it's like, oh, wow, like, this is something we need to, this is his realization moment, and then he finally becomes an active participant in, like, helping, the good guys in this. But the fact that they left it all the way up until, like, the very end of the very final battle scene, I thought that was quite, it wasn't very satisfying.
Yeah, and then they decided to have him, like, stay in Eternia for some reason.
I mean, like, well, apparently he said, oh, well, I've got everything I need here, I've got a beautiful woman, it's a heck of a retirement, isn't it? Like, so, like, he was wanting to retire at that point. And also, like, he probably imagined he'd been, around for quite a long time. I mean, he obviously served in Korea, he then became a police officer after that. I think now that he's gone to Eternia and, like, saved the day and rescued the sorceress, I think he's due his retirement, I think, if you ask me.
I just wish that they would have built it up a little bit better.
Yeah, but this is the thing, that's what I mean. Like, if he had done this earlier in the movie, like, if he was, like, helping out the good guys, towards the end of the second act, I probably would have been more forgiving about it. But no, they rushed his character arc so quickly in the final third that, it really was a bit underwhelming when it finally was delivered.
Yeah. And speaking of the sorceress, I mean, she's mostly trapped throughout the beginning of the film because, Skeletor is trapping her so that he can be able to have her witness as he controls the cosmos, and she slowly...
If you're a fan of the movie, you probably would get some emotional out of it, but if you're, like, seeing this, like, for the first time, you have no idea who the sorceress is, you don't care about this character.
Yeah, I mean, the sorceress is a pretty important character. I mean, she was the one who granted He-Man the ability for him to become He-Man with the magic sword, and also spoilers for those who have never seen the show, but it's later on revealed that Teela is the sorceress's daughter, and, nobody knows about this, not even Teela, so, yeah, that's something that we learn, throughout the course of the show, and so, yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you that there is a little bit of interesting plot twist that happened with the characters.
I would have liked it if it was like, the problem is that I feel like this movie starts halfway through where the movie really should be, like, they should have set the premise of, like, here's Prince Adam, he's then be given this magical sword that basically makes him turn into He-Man, then, Skeletor attacks, and he takes over the whole place, and then it's up to, our heroes are sidelined effectively on Earth, and now he's got to go and save the day, and then, Prince Adam learns that he's actually from, originally from Earth, and then, there's stuff that goes on from there, and then after that we have the massive battle that, to save Eternia and basically save the universe, basically, and then, He-Man is the hero in all of this. Again, like, this is such a simple premise. And this is what you do with it. It's like, it's just, it's like, it's just disappointing every time we talk about the story because we know it could have been done far better than it was, and this is what we ended up with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. It's just, that's how I feel.
Yeah, and then, of course, they had to tease us with the post-credit scene where Skeletor looks into the water in the pit, and he says, I'll be back.
Yeah, probably that whole suit fell apart by the time they got him out of the water, but, yeah.
So they were teasing for a sequel.
They were teasing for a sequel, and I just think that, obviously it will never come because, the first movie did it so terribly, and deservedly so, because I've never seen something so wrong-footed. I've got to be honest with you, though. Well, I've seen Doug's first movie, I've seen Hey Arnold the movie, I've seen various other TV shows that have then, transformed onto the big screen, and they've just failed so terribly, and it's so infuriating, once again, watching a movie that, comes up on the screen, you think it's going to be really epic, you think it's going to be really fun, you think it's going to basically just turn everything up to 100, and it just, falls onto its side and just, crumples up, it's just so infuriating knowing that this exists and knowing that, it could have been so much better than it actually was.
Yeah.
Well,
I was also bored throughout a lot of the portions of the movie, too. Like, I was just, waiting. It's like, come on.
Get on with it.
Yeah, get on with it. I want to see, the action. I want to get to the fireworks factory at this point.
Yeah, it's funny because, He-Man, I think this is one of the difficulties they ran into, because with He-Man, you can't slow down. Every single bit needs to be in action, or it needs to be something interesting that's kind of being explained, but you can only do it for this is the reason why He-Man works as a 22-minute cartoon, because you can basically fill it up full of action, and the kids will all enjoy it and go nuts. And then only small portions of it you can do explainers and this is what's happening in the story, and this is the reason why He-Man needs to do this, and this is the reason why the sorceress needs to say this, and that's the reason why the king and queen need to do these things, and Man-at-Arms needs to build this thing, and why all the other characters need to exist, and why Orko needs to basically, do some comic relief for 12 seconds. Everything here within a 22-minute thing has its place. In an hour and a half of Masters of the Universe, you really struggle with that. And you can tell that they were struggling with that because of all the other stuff that would go into it. But all the other stuff of it is not interesting. And like you were saying before, me and Patricia were just kind of come on, let's get to where we need to go. And then we get back into the action and it's lame. Or when you get back into some interesting dialogue and it's not interesting, and we then move on to the next thing, it's just, ugh. And funny enough though, it's interesting because we've been through movies like this, and we've needed to take like a 15-minute break halfway through, and then say, okay, let's sit down and let's get through the rest of it.
Yeah.
We didn't do it in this movie. Why?
I think the reason why was because we were just so perplexed as to saying, what interesting decisions that they decided to put into this movie.
But they're interesting decisions, but not good decisions.
No, but at least it got us, eyebrow raises saying, you have that scene that you mentioned earlier about this is the special effects that we were able to do with He-Man just flying up in a freaking hoverboard so that he can be able to take down Skeletor's minions. It's okay, I mean, I get it, you have Battle Cat absent from this movie, so obviously he's not going to have a riding companion, so he needs to use that hoverboard thingy. So
he basically stole it off one of the other stormtroopers, I guess you can call them, and then he rode it around himself like Silver Surfer.
Sure.
Isn't that funny? This movie rips off so much stuff. It rips off Star Wars. It rips off Lord of the Rings. It rips off, Silver Surfer. It rips off Back to the Future. It rips off, other things that, was there at the time. And it's there's no originality in this product, is there?
Yeah,
even the whole premise of it is even borrowed from a cartoon show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a cartoon show that was based off of a toy line.
Exactly, yeah. It's but it's funny because, things like this don't have to be garbage. And there's one glaring example of something that was based off a toy line that then became a cartoon show and then, became something that, has stayed within our childhoods and we still consider pretty epic. And you know what that is?
And what's that?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, there you go. And that movie came out 3 years after this one, and it showed us, hey, this is how you do this stuff right.
Yeah, and also tell you what, TMNT in itself could have easily become a disaster in itself.
Oh, sure,
yeah. Exactly. And but thankfully, I don't know, maybe they probably looked at Masters of the Universe and said, oh, we better stay clear of that. And they did what they did. And who knows, maybe I guess Masters of the Universe 1987 could potentially be, if we had to take any, I would say positives out of it, quote unquote. I mean, it could be a cautionary tale of how not to do something.
Yeah. I guess that's true. And the moment that TMNT came out and everybody absolutely loved it, it's people were just thinking He-Man who?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, mind you, like He-Man, towards the beginning of the night. I mean, it was already on the out really at that point, and then when they tried to rescue it by basically doing the '90s He-Man cartoon, I mean, like that.
It was done.
That was there was no rescue. But putting He-Man in pants was the worst thing I think that they ever did. Like putting like, okay, why don't we put more clothes on He-Man? It's like, and let's make him a bit more slender, and let's put him in space. Like, it's just no. No, that was never gonna work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and then afterwards, Ninja Turtles pretty much took over the universe at that point.
Well, it's still here now, so, like, it never went away.
That's
like,
true, yeah.
It's funny because, The Simpsons, Scooby-Doo, TMNT, SpongeBob SquarePants, like, they're...
Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes, I guess you guys say it to a degree. I mean, even though, like, Coyote vs. Apnea basically died and then came back to life again. It's, there's a lot of things that have, like, just stood the test of time and have not, but unfortunately, things like He-Man, things like Duke Nukem, things like various other big muscly beefy men like that were action packed. I mean, G.I. Joe isn't really a thing anymore, is it?
Not
like
really, no.
And it's just the only other thing I could think of that's also stood the test of time is Transformers, because obviously there's been various renditions of it.
Yeah.
And Pokemon's basically still managed to be a thing after, even though they've been invented like probably like 1 million Pokemon at this point.
Over 1,000, but close enough.
All right then. Well, I have no further questions. But so the fact that it makes me wonder if they actually did this right. If they actually did this right, and like if they didn't, so the Terminator didn't actually have was not like a big massive production, was it? Like if anything, it was film noir, and it was like done quite on a small scale. But then was like the illusion of like how big and epic it was what hit the negatives of the Terminator. It makes me wonder if they did that, if they decided that we're gonna like do like a very small scale, like because if you think about it, the He-Man cartoon itself, even though it's very simply put together, like it still retains its epicness, and I think that's also another thing that they did not learn from the cartoon show itself, and what makes the cartoon show better than this, the fact that you took something that was rather simple and you then hid as much as you could the negatives of that, and you just made the story quite epically large, and you made the characters quite epically large, and you gave it a lot of personality, a lot of humor, and a lot of like a lot more of that, and you hid away like the things that made it weak. I mean, they should have probably taken some lessons from the cartoon show about how to make something quite small in stature and make it look bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, and again, one thing that learned that lesson was the Ninja Turtles movie.
Exactly, yeah. So I guess the one thing we haven't really talked about is the music, really, because the one thing that's quite interesting about it is that, I mean, obviously it's very Star Warsy, but one person actually looked at it and said, yeah, actually some of the music actually feels kind of Rocky-like in a way. And
there's a reason why, because Bill Conti, who composed the Rocky soundtrack, did this movie.
Yeah, exactly, and so I think that's another thing they brought along from Rocky as well, which is kind of like, oh wow. And but I mean, like the music itself, I mean, like it's a mixture of Superman, it's a mixture of Star Wars, it's a mixture of like Rocky sort of like sounding themes. And I mean, like I like with the like I said before about the Jimi Hendrix reference and some of the other like little references that they put into. And actually, to be honest with you, the key actually sounds pretty cool as well. Like when they they're playing around with it and stuff, and they're making sound. I mean, that sounds really good.
Yeah, I would have really thought that if they were to fiddle around with the key, maybe they could have played the He-Man theme song, because we never hear it referenced at all throughout this entire movie.
And don't tell me they didn't have the rights to it. Please don't tell me they didn't have the rights to it. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we'll let you have He-Man, we'll let you have like a few of the other characters, but the theme song's ours. You can't have that. Like, what? So, I'm really hoping that wasn't just discussion.
Yeah,
you're gonna pay extra. It's like it's kind of like, oh, could you imagine like they treated like giving the film studio, like when they were negotiating, is like, it's like, okay, well, we'll give you the basic of He-Man, but the rest of it's DLC. You have to pay for that and don't. Can you imagine if that was a negotiation? That'd be hilarious.
It's like, okay, you could have He-Man, you could have Skeletor, you could have a few of the characters, you can have, we can give you Eternia, we can give you Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
But what about the theme song?
Oh, that's the premium package. Money, please.
Money.
Oh well, like if you want some like random stuff you can put in, here's a loot crate. Oh, this went away from an 80s discussion, didn't it? Here's a 21st century discussion of loot boxes and like other crap that you get off the internet. Oh, we're moving away from this. Anyway, so the music. So yeah, it's all borrowed. Like it just feels borrowed. Like, and even some of the references that, like I said, about Jimi Hendrix and some of the other stuff, that's all borrowed too. Like, it's like there's nothing really redeemable from the music in my opinion, but that's just me. And then, like, I guess, one last thing I think we probably talk about, at least in my notes, is that what legacy does this film have? Like, it's besides ruining Dolph's career, and besides, giving us a lot of, like, what could have been, and the fact that, we are talking about this again. But here's the thing about it. The only reason we're talking about this again now is because now we're going to get another Masters of the Universe movie here in 2026.
Yeah.
So either two things going to happen from this. We don't learn from history, or someone took this and decided, oh yeah, I can make I hated the 1987 movie, I'm going to make a much better version of it. I'm hoping it's either going to be one of the two, or it's just going to be like a mediocre movie, and it's going to be like, we're not going to talk about it at all, so...
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, I mean, yeah, it had a massive box office failure when this first came out. It had a $22 million budget, and it only made back $17.3 million.
That's horrible.
That's horrible. And also, critics did not like this movie whatsoever.
Dolph got a lot of stick for this movie because, just because of how, much statue-like he was, really. Like, he was... I would say that he was cosplaying as He-Man. I would say, like, you see cosplayers who probably will walk around, Comic-Con, as you know, and, I mean, looking at that, you can see people who can dress as the character, but they can't act like the character. Like, and that to me is Dolph in a nutshell in this, and everybody else, like, there's nothing to write home about with this really at all. Like, it's just, except for how bad it's basically been put together, and I just feel after watching it again, and someone who was a massive He-Man fan back in the day, I just feel deflated after watching it, and it's just like, because it's the same way I feel about Hey Arnold the movie, where when I first, oh wow, there's gonna be a Hey Arnold movie, and when I finally saw that, like, I felt deflated because, like, oh wow, they just basically took some episodes of the show and just glued it all together and made it into a movie. Thanks, Nickelodeon. Thanks.
Yeah, and seriously, if you want to know more reasons as to why that happened, go watch my
go
watch my video on the history of Hey Arnold the Jungle.
Or go listen to my my umpteenth Hey Arnold anniversary shows that I do, and how we talk about it and like how badly it was put together behind the scenes from Craig Bartlett himself.
Yeah. Have fun, guys.
Yeah, anyway, so Masters of the Universe, and so I mean, if we had to rate this, oh boy, yeah. I would say it has some clever references, but only like one or two to kind of like jig your mind. But the rest of it is just like, there's nothing redeeming about the characters. There's nothing redeeming about the music. There's nothing redeeming about what you're looking at. Everything feels borrowed. Everything feels, like it doesn't feel original. And also the fact that He-Man had the ability to be so epic, and they basically just turned it into a really bad, dark sci-fi noir, and with a little bit of action mixed in between with some like goofy gadgets. I'm gonna say 3. I will say 3 out of 10. That's being nice, I think.
Yeah, I think 3 out of 10 is very appropriate.
Yeah, it stops being 2 out of 10 because there were some bits of it actually I did get some enjoyment out of, but besides that, no, 3.
Nah, I'm sorry. I know this film is seen as a cult classic for some people, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't really get into it myself. I just found it to be mostly a bore, and I just found it to be really out of place with some things that are not familiar with the He-Man legacy that we would know of. And so, yeah, I mean, you have this mishmash of, okay, we're going to have a little bit of He-Man, but then a little bit of this, teenage coming-of-age drama mixed into it. And, yeah, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and it's so infuriating because, several decades down the line, like, I always kind of look at it and think, what could have been? I mean, who knows? Maybe we're going to finally get Masters of the Universe 2026, and we're going to sit here and say, oh, wow, yeah, this is the way you should have done He-Man. Like, but I don't know, looking at the trailer and seeing, what's going to be on offer, I mean, like, I don't know, even I'm skeptical about that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, things have changed since, the He-Man first came into the 80s. Like, there's been so many comic books, there's been so many new iterations of He-Man. You had the 2002 series, you have the new Netflix series, both of them, one of which was done by Kevin Smith, that's still actually airing on Netflix to this day with new episodes. So, yeah, I mean, He-Man has gone through a massive change and resurgence over time. So, So yeah, I take it that the He-Man that we knew as kids is much different from the He-Man that other kids are seeing now. Even though that Kevin Smith had said that Revelations is actually a sequel to the 80s series, but we don't know of that as of yet because we haven't seen it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just curious as to see how this interpretation of Masters of the Universe is going to be.
And also, well, I mean, the only thing I could probably think of is that we're not going to be borrowing from action and also sports movies of the 80s at that time. We're going to be borrowing from action movies from Marvel.
I think we're done here.
Yeah, I think we're done.
All right, so yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, letting us, please let us know in the comments about your thoughts of Masters of the Universe.
The fact that we've gone over 50 minutes on this, I think, goes to show you, how much problems we have with this movie, but, at least we found, a little tiny bits of nuggets of enjoyment of this, but not very much.
No, not very much. You just have to squint, really, really small in order for you to get some decency.
It's like opening a bag of popcorn and, all the popcorn kernels have all popped and everything like that, and you just find one or two that actually are, and when you put them in your mouth, they just kind of crunch.
Yeah. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah,
it's like a really bad bag of popcorn. I think that's a good way to describe Masters of the Universe, I guess.
Yeah, that's gonna be its legacy. Masters of the Universe is like a bag of popcorn. Anyway, but yeah, let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on Masters of the Universe. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And what are your thoughts on the 2026 upcoming He-Man and the Masters of the Universe trailer?
Well, it was only a teaser. I guess by the time this reviews had a chance to kind of mature, I think we'll probably have a full trailer and probably have Masters of the Universe out by the June at this point.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Who knows? Maybe the comments will be full of oh, maybe the new movie wasn't so bad. Well, I like to think anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, but there's one thing I want to actually plug. So, I actually have a new online radio show, which is Animation Jukebox, which is featured on Daz in the Hat Radio. So go over to dazinthehatradio.com so you can check out Animation Jukebox. So yeah, new episodes will be airing on Mondays at 6:00 p.m. And I do have some subsequent other airings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So yeah, I'll leave more information about it up here so you can go check that out.
You should also leave it in the description below
as
well.
Yep, I will do that too.
And leave us a comment. We like to read your comments. So,
yeah. And also leave a comment about, other things that you want us to talk about. Because we actually do read the comments and we are actually curious about, what people want us to talk about.
Cool. All right then, everybody. So we will see you for the next one, which is going to be really interesting because we just randomly decided to do this one. We're going to be looking at We're Back, a Dinosaur Story.
Until
Why?
then,
I'm not entirely sure.
Until then, everyone, take care.